Welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake LaMore, and our guest today just released a new book called I See You, and the author is none other than Amy Kemp, who lives in Bourbonnais, right?
I do.
Yeah. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's fun to be here. I have to tell you that when my kids were younger and I took them to grade school, we would always listen to you in the morning. So it's really funny that I'm sitting across from you.
Oh, that's awesome. Well,
having
thank you.
your voice in my headphones. So
it's really, it's kind of a circle moment, right? Because what I also love about this right now, we're sitting down to where you actually recorded the audio book version of this book, I See You, as well, right in this room we're recording in right now. So it's just like, wow, this is, and it's also kind of weird, like that we're not like I feel like we should be doing that right now, just because there were, I don't know, how many sessions was it that we did for the audio
That's
book?
a good question. At more than 10, probably.
It was.
Do you think?
I think it was around 10. There. Like you killed it. With, that was, to be fair, that was my first like kind of being behind the scenes on an audiobook recording. Sure. But from what I could tell, and of course, it's not like this is a 500-page book, but still, I thought you went through it pretty well. You're like, yeah, we did 3 chapters today. And I'm like, whoa, I was like, that's pretty good.
That took way more energy than what I thought it was going to. There was a higher level of focus to bring, not only to hit the words correctly and to read it without errors, but to bring the energy of the book to it, because it is my voice in the book. And I wanted people to feel, I think you can feel people even through an audiobook. And so I wanted to make sure that it had the feel of the book in my tone. And then it was cool there was the guy from Maryland in my ears guiding. Yeah, Steven's there. And so it was just a really neat collaborative process.
It was, yeah. And it's bringing up what you just said. It's kind of a weird spot, right? Because you have to sound like yourself, but you also have to have this edge of animation about your voice too that you don't normally sound like. So it's kind of like an in-between of your normal voice and then like the very high spectrum of like being too animated. You have to like find that middle ground. So isn't that weird how that works out? Because you can't just go in and sound like yourself. I'm like, well, you don't sound very excited in this part. I need you to that sentence needs to sound more exciting that you just read.
The other piece that you noticed, there were a couple of times where I said, Steven, this author is so wordy.
Yeah, who is this? Who wrote this book?
We would just laugh because a sentence, and actually, thankfully, when I was recording, the book had not fully gone to print yet. And so we were able to make some changes based on me hearing myself out loud and saying, oh, I just repeated that word in the last sentence, or we were able to just make some small tweaks that needed to be made. So, but it was great. And I'm really excited to have that as an offering because a lot of my readers are women who are really busy. And so sitting down to read a book feels unattainable, but they consume huge quantities of books listening while they're doing other things. There tends to be like this work at home or wherever you are, where you're either in the car or you can listen, but you can't sit and read. So I'm happy to have that offering.
Yeah. And fun fact, your brain does not know the difference between an audiobook and actually physically reading a book. Your brain does not know the difference. So throw that out there as well. You mean it's
absorbing the information the same way?
I believe so.
Interesting.
Yeah. Huh. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm still a tactile learner. With books like mine, I want to hold it in my hands, and I get that feedback from a lot of people too. And yet there are some books where I prefer it on Audible.
Yes.
I want to hear the Audible.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, we're getting all caught up in the audiobook. It's just because, I was very thankful to be a part of that, and Pathfinder was too. So thank you for that. But let's backtrack a little bit and just kind of get some backstory on you, just because you, up to this point, you have lived several different lives, and people might know you from one or the other and didn't realize the other one even existed.
Totally.
So, are you originally from the Kankakee County area?
No, I grew up in Sandwich, Illinois, so about an hour from here. I went to Millikan University, got my teaching degree in English, and then got my first teaching job at Clifton Central High School. So that's what brought me to the area. And then while living there, met my husband, Ryan, who's from Clifton. So I have actually now lived in this area longer than I lived where I grew up. So it does feel more like home to me. We lived in Clifton for 6 years, and I still play pickleball there. So shout out to my pickleball friends. And we have lots of ties from that area, obviously. But then we moved here, my son's 17. So 17 years ago, we moved to Bourbonnais.
Okay.
And that's been home since. So that first life of being a teacher, I both taught in Clifton and then in Herscher. And fun fact is that at that time, I was so young that a lot of my students who were seniors and juniors were not that much.
There wasn't a big age difference, right?
I mean, if they knew, in fact, how small of an age gap there was, it might have been like, whoa. So now today, a lot of them have kids the same ages as me, and we kind of live parallel lives more than me being older than them.
Yeah.
From that first season.
Yeah.
Then I started a small business in sales. A lot of people know me from that realm, which I built for 20 years. Into what I would say, I mean, it still is amazing that it grew like it did, but I was leading the number one team in sales in the United States, and a lot of those people were local or from small towns around here. Some of my most amazing favorite people in the whole world. This most recent iteration of Amy Kemp came about a little bit accidentally in that I just kept on feeling this nudge to work with women outside of the context of that other business. I don't know why it felt ridiculous. It felt like I'm already leading all of these women. And yet I kept on running into people in different settings and hearing this message that I needed to work with women outside of that space.
Do you feel like it was just because all the interactions you had with either people on your team or even people not even in the same company, but maybe a company similar to it with a similar position as you, you all kept saying like the same things. Like, I'm exhausted. I'm working all of this.
Yes. So the similarities between, and it would be, I'm at a ball game or I'm at a community event or I'm at church or I'm wherever I am. I find myself in these one-on-one conversations with women having similar themes. Isolation, exhaustion, overwhelm, a general feeling of not being seen. And in fact, can I share the title, the story that inspired the title? Because I think this sort of captures the woman that I'm talking about. So I was at a networking event. A mutual friend very quickly said, Amy, I want you to meet so-and-so. Very quick interaction. But I felt like, when you meet someone and you think, I want to know that person more.
Yes.
And so I reached out to her after the event, maybe the next day or something, and just said, I'd love to meet for coffee. So we sat down and for about an hour, I just asked questions, learning her story. And this is someone I would say sits at important tables in our community, makes decisions that impact hundreds, if not thousands of people through her work, has a really busy, committed family life. And she tells me her whole story. And we're almost like wrapping up. And she kind of abruptly stops and looks at me and says, why did you invite me here to coffee? And it was this like, I kind of paused. And then I just said, because I see you. And she just put her head down and wept in the middle of this really busy coffee shop. And I just let her. I knew she needed to. And then she sat up and she sort of composed herself, wiped her eyes and said, "Thank you. So few people do." And that was my person. Everyone sees her, but no one sees her. And that person doesn't need the very quick 5 tips.
Yeah.
She already knows them. She's not new to this. And she's already established herself and has a level of credibility and success. But that was my person I kept running into that I knew I needed to serve. So few people were seeing them and they were everywhere. And so she represented that in sort of a big picture and then inspired, obviously, the title, I See You. It was interesting. I'll give you some behind the scenes on the publishing piece. So I work with this amazing publishing company that's out of Vancouver, and it's called Page 2. And the team supporting me has been amazing. But the title was problematic. They really wanted the book to be like about me.
I see.
And they wanted to center me in the storyline. And I kept saying, I'm not the center of this book. That's not why I wrote this book. I wrote this book for this person that I had coffee with and everyone like her. And even
yourself. You're
and
like
me, absolutely.
You are
I am that. You're always your ideal client, right? You always are. So anyhow, so we went back and forth because the titles they were wanting were more like master of whatever. They were centering me. And obviously I'm on the cover of the book, so I am central to it in that I'm the one seeing. But what I wanted from the book was for women to read it and to feel like they were in a one-on-one coaching session with me, that they felt seen, they felt understood. Because once they do, then they can do all the other things. And so we came down to like this impasse on the title, and I just said, I'm not backing down. Like,
so you just put your foot down and like, listen, it's going to be this way. That's how it is.
Yeah. And I wrote this book for someone, not about me. I'm not the expert coming in to teach you. I just know you. I see you. I see what's happening and I know you. I work with you every day. And so that's the shift or the difference in this book. Is that I wanted it to be a safe space for women to feel seen and understood. It's
kind of like breaking that fourth wall. Like, I don't know, I'm thinking of theater. And when
tell me more. I don't know what that means, fourth wall.
So it's, or even in, if you're in a band and you're performing on stage, it's you break that fourth wall when you interact with your audience. So instead of...
Why is it called the fourth wall?
I don't know.
Oh, maybe because there's like 3 walls behind you and on the sides, and then there's a fourth in front of you or something?
But I think of that reference just because I imagine, the publishing company saying, no, Amy Kemp is on a stage and you are teaching this audience and you're not breaking away from that. But it's like, no. I'm going to get off the stage and I'm going to walk down the aisle.
Yes.
And actually...
I'm here in service of my reader or my audience if you're using theater, instead of I'm here to perform for them.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what's so funny about that? I love theater, by the way. I mean, in fact, it's funny. Right before we came here, I was texting my daughter about flying to New York and flying home in the same day to go see Hell's Kitchen, which is Alicia Keys' new musical.
Yeah.
We love to go to New York to theater because the New York theater crowds are so interactive with the people on stage.
They're into it.
And the theaters are smaller there, so you're closer and you're just more like a part of the show. And I love that. So that's a really great illustration of what I hope people experience in reading this is like they're close to the stage, not only as an audience member, but as a participant in the actual show.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And this book is an interactive book because at the end of each chapter is almost like some thought-provoking questions you're supposed to ask yourself, and you ask people to write down their answers to this in a journal. And so they're able to reflect on the things that you're talking about. And you're while you are sharing your journey, as you said, it's not exactly like, oh, me, I did this. And, you're just like saying like, hey, I've been there, or I'm here as well. And I see you, and I know you're going through the same thing, because most of us are, right?
Totally.
So
absolutely.
But I'm curious, what got you out of teaching? Though? How did that? Was that
this is a funny question to ask me in front of a bunch of people that are from our community. You know what? I think there were multiple things. I think I have the heart of an entrepreneur. And so working in a very controlled from this time to this time wasn't really going to jive with my spirit. I also had a baby.
Okay.
And actually, I talk about this in the book, but the traditional work world is really tough for people raising kids, especially women. Right. I mean, it wasn't created. So this is the current traditional work structure was not created for the way that families are functioning now, the majority. Meaning the current work structure was built for a family where one person left the home for 8 hours a day, one person stayed home and took care of all the unpaid labor, the caregiving, all of the home things, right? Well, now in our current economy, it's very difficult to make enough money to do that, where you need the 2-income home. If you're fortunate enough to have 2 partners sharing that responsibility, which that's a whole nother thing, right?
Yes, it is.
If you're single parenting, you don't have a choice. You have to leave the home.
Yep.
But there are all kinds of structures, and I write about this in chapter 9 of the book, that are in place that don't support that new family structure. And what has happened is that all the unpaid labor that women were doing as their men left the home to go make the money didn't get equally distributed, or they're still doing the bulk of it while also working full time. And that's not just cooking, cleaning, childcare. That's also who's making all the appointments, who's buying all of the gifts, who's planning the parties and the holiday gatherings, and distributing who's bringing what for those events, who is even just keeping track of school communication and homework and that kind of thing if you have children, but even caregiving for elderly parents. It's not just kids. Even just owning a home has its own set of, we just got this thing from like a utility company that we needed to fill out this form, and you're just, there's just a lot of things that you're doing in the running of a home that tend to lean toward women getting them done. And they're also doing the paid labor now. So they're doing unpaid and paid labor. And that's not, the unpaid labor is so valuable to our communities and our families, and it's so important. I'm not saying it's not valuable. I'm saying you don't get paid for it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So you come to this place. What happens is that women are exhausted by all of those demands, and then they're not able to maybe, for example, sell as many widgets as someone else, or they're not able to. The thought of even pursuing that higher level leadership role is just daunting because they're barely keeping up with what they're doing now. And they think it's because they're not capable, when really it's just that they're doing 2 full-time jobs.
Or 4 or 5.
Well, exactly. Yes, exactly. Right. So again, and this isn't like, even in my house, Brian jumps in with anything, but I'm overseeing it all. So the point is, one, can we pay someone else to do some of the unpaid labor so that, for example, I write about this in the book, but my friend Erica owns a cleaning business locally. Well, can I pay Erica to have some of her team clean my house so that I can, use that energy to do this that will create the money that I can use. Then she can build a business that supports her and her family and the people who work for her versus trying to do all of that unpaid labor on our own.
Yes. And I'm sure some people are thinking, well, I don't have money to pay,
Yes, it's like the chicken or the egg, right? And you don't have the money because you're doing all the unpaid labor. But so it's not like you're offloading all of it right away. It's just baby steps or even distributing it more equally among the people in your house. But even that is fraught with a lot of energy because you have to hold them accountable to doing it. And like my husband would do laundry once a month. He would wait till it was at the worst point. And that doesn't.
I'm so guilty of that. Yeah, literally, I will let it gets to like a mountain. And then
I know this
mountain.
I know this mountain. We had this mountain last week and he was so excited about it. And then he attacks it and he feels like he conquered the mountain. I hate the mountain. Like I want just a small hill and then take care of it. So again, but here's the other thing.
Does he say kablooey too? Because so another funny connection is your husband has worked. He's still an administrator in the schools and teacher and coach and all of that. And I had him for driver's ed. And every time I think of Ryan Kemp, I think of him teaching driver's ed in the summertime. And he would always talk about when there was an accident and be like, yeah, if you don't stop, then like kablooey, right into Walmart. It was always kablooey right into. It was always Walmart too. It seemed
awesome.
like, so I don't know if that's like a word or phrase he uses like on the daily. And
has many words.
But that's what I always think of when I think of Ryan Kemp. Anyway,
but I do think what I want people to hear from that is just that, especially women, there's nothing wrong with you. And you are so capable of earning more, that next level. But the reason it feels unattainable isn't because of a skill or you're not capable. One other thing, there are a lot of structures that inhibit this. Like, for example, a lot of business meetings where networking happens among people who are power players happen at 7 a.m. and 4 or 5 p.m., which are literally the worst 2 times for, we'll say, parents, because it's the worst. Like those are just absolutely inaccessible for me.
You're getting the kids ready for school and then you're picking them up at the end of the day. And then there's
just like a flurry of things that happen during that time that I've got to be present for.
Yeah, so, sports, homework.
Yeah. So, or how about this? Even things like summer sports camps run by schools happen between like 10 and 11:30 a.m. Monday through Friday, which is, what are you supposed to do if you're working? There are just these structural things in place that still are set up assuming that you have someone who's available and flexible, or even just summer break in general is really difficult for working parents. All the breaks and those types of things, early releases. And again, it's just that these structures are still in place that were set up for a world that no longer exists. Yeah. And so we've got to make some structural changes. I'm not sure that's my level. I'm more just drawing attention to the fact that
you're just trying to help people get through it.
To understand why this feels so difficult. Mm-hmm. There is a reason.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of brings it to one of the simple things that it's a simple thing, but it's something that we don't consciously think about every day until you kind of pointed it out, talking about your natural genius. I feel like that's where this
chapter
where that leads us to, and something that I feel like we don't think about enough. We're always thinking about the pieces or the tasks that we struggle with, right? And we're like, oh, I want to be better at that, but yet we don't give ourselves enough credit for the things that just are so natural to us, and we do them so well. And that's one thing you touch on.
So true.
One of the things you touch on early on in the book is your natural genius. So I don't know if you want to explain
I'd love
that.
to talk about that.
Yeah.
So, and there's a fun story in there about Justin Giacchino, who runs the Bourbonnais Starbucks.
Yes.
Many people know him in our community. And this is the thing. Our areas of natural genius often feel so easy to us that we think we don't even recognize them. We're just doing it intuitively, instinctively, and therefore we tend to undervalue them. So one of the challenges in the book is do the thing that feels easy to you and astonishes everyone else. What is that thing? So, for example, for me, I have always, literally, I can remember doing this in grade school, been able to facilitate small groups of conversations with people and I can get the conversation to go deep where people really share things that are meaningful to them. Well, I didn't know that was a special gift. It was just something I did. I did it as a teacher. I did it as a student. I've always done that. It felt so easy to me. And so I didn't know how valuable it was. And one element of my business now is structured around leading small groups of women through a curriculum. Right?
That sounds familiar.
Right. And so I think, oh my gosh, but I've watched other people try to do it through the years and they can't. They either dominate the conversation with teaching, they let someone dominate the conversation without drawing everyone in and making it interactive. It is natural genius and it is exceptionally valuable. One of the tools I use in my coaching is the book titled The Greatest Salesman in the World. And there are scrolls in the book that are 2 to 3 pages long. But one of the things it says is, you are rare and there is value in all rarity. Therefore, you are valuable. So your gifts are rare. Those gifts that are rare, for example, that example I just gave. And there is value in all rarity, meaning diamonds are valuable because there aren't very many of them. So when that gift is rare, it's valuable. And we are thinking, oh, I don't even notice it because it feels so easy to me.
Well, we live in such a demanding, multitasking culture where it's no. I need you to do all of these things and I need you to do all of them well.
Yes. And we stink at some of them.
Yeah.
And then we preclude ourselves thinking we're not good.
Mm-hmm.
And so Justin in the story has this natural ability to make a space feel welcoming. And the Starbucks isn't the most aesthetically pleasing Starbucks I've ever been in, but they do an astonishing amount of sales. And I've watched him create that, and he does not know he's doing it. I'm confident he's just being who he is.
That's what he's good at.
It's
That's
his natural genius.
Yeah.
So it's how can you find a space where you can use that thing that feels so easy to you, but astonishes everyone else, and use it to generate income for your family, whether it be through an entrepreneurial space or as an employee, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Where can you serve the world with that unique genius? But also, I think for my ideal reader, I want to challenge them to make money from it.
Yes. Right.
I do.
And that's what you did for yourself.
Totally. That's true.
You kind of, I think of, you've got all these things on the side that you were good at in your previous business. And you're I'm good at all these things. And you kind of just spread the sea, so to speak. And then you're but this thing
is what really drives me.
This thing in the middle, this is what I'm really good at. Yeah. And so I'm just going to focus on this, and then I can charge money for it. And
And here's the thing. You can't be a prophet in your own land always. You learn that as a parent really quickly.
Oh, that is so true. Man.
Right? So even while I've served so many people locally, I also know that there's a limited space for that. And so some of the people who will receive what I have to say aren't just local. There are other ways that I can work with people now that allow me to have that impact in a greater space, which is cool. Really cool.
And we were kind of talking about this before we were recording, but your focus is women. And obviously this book is geared towards women, although I feel like a man could easily benefit from this book as well, just because I think a lot of the topics in this book are universal. But specifically for women, I think it's just, that's what you've built your life around, your business around. You can you work the best with.
I know them.
Women.
Yeah, I do have both male and female clients, but the majority, I would say, are women, and always have been. There's something about the experience that's a little different. They tend to doubt themselves more, push aside their natural genius more easily, overlook their value, not demand that they get paid what they're worth. More commonly, that may be a stereotype than men. But I have quite a few male advanced readers of the book, and they've all said the same thing. Well, why did you market it just toward women? I said, well, because every other book is marketed toward you. So just now you know how we feel. We're reading all these business books that are like so clearly masculine in their marketing. So I'm just giving a special gift, but of course, all of the men are welcome in that space as well.
Well, and to credit what you just said, I mean, how many women read all of those books that were maybe on the more masculine end? Men have every right to be able to do the same thing.
Totally.
If, okay, it's geared towards women, I'm going to read it. I don't care because I'm finding it so far that I'm like, wow, this is making me think about all kinds of things. And it's not like it's not to the point where it's so geared towards women that anyone can take something out of this book.
It's universal truth.
I know one thing we wanted to make sure we talked about with the book I See You, which available anywhere online.
Yeah, anywhere you can buy books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, of course. You can actually go to amykemp.com/book. And there you will find, sometimes people like to purchase bookshop.org gives a portion of the sales to local bookstores. So cool. There are different spaces where you can buy the book depending on what you prefer. And then, of course, Audible, and then the Kindle version is available as well.
Yeah. But we wanted to get to kind of like all the different local people that were involved in helping make this book possible, all the local people here in the Kankakee area. So, I mean, obviously we already touched on Pathfinder's part of it.
Yeah.
But, getting to like even just the cover photo was done by a wonderful local photographer.
Okay. I know this because I have clients from all over the country. And this just happened in the fall. I do an event where I bring 8 women in from around the country for a weekend retreat. And it's kind of like the natural genius chapter. We forget how great the area where we live is. We tend to just take things for granted, or we don't recognize. They were astonished, one, at how connected everyone was. I sent them, they had some free time and they went to some local businesses and just got to experience this area. And it was so cool to hear their feedback on that, because we live here. So you just forget, right?
And this is something that we bring up quite often on the podcast. And so I'm glad you're bringing it up once again, because it's always good to have that reminder.
Yeah. But not only that, we have the caliber of, for example, Sarah Jane Photography, who did the cover. Her skills in the world are at the top of the heap. And my publisher was really nervous, I think, when I said I wanted to have my picture on the cover, number one, and number two, that I had someone who would take the pictures, because they just kept saying, well, it has to be a really good quality. And they are so thrilled with what we created with that picture and their design team together. But with what Sarah brought to the table, It's like world-class quality.
Yeah, I agree. It's a fantastic photo and fantastic cover. It really does look like this was
just amazing, right?
Yeah.
And so that, obviously, Nicole Marie's salon did all the makeup and hair right next door.
Okay.
Which is super cool. But then there are people throughout in the book. Obviously, you all helped me with the recording of the Audible. There was just a very collaborative, even deciding the cover went through, well, obviously Stacey Wilkin with Experience Edit, just because she has such a good design eye. Her sister, Jamie, does all my graphic design work.
Oh, she's a great graphic designer. Yeah.
She's fabulous. I have this team of people around me. They're astonishingly brilliant and amazing. And just that they're right here. Not only that, but there were some other support things that came in, financing for certain parts of the book. Barbie Brewer Watson helped me with that, which was super important, connecting me. Gracia Turner at Iroquois Federal was a partner in bringing the book to life. There's just like this cool collaborative process. And probably my favorite thing in the whole world is when there's just an idea and then there's a million steps, but then there is the thing, the idea, and it's in your hands. There's something about that. And it's not the end that is really the joy. It's the how many people it took to collaborate to create this book. It's astonishing. So when people say, "Oh, you wrote a book," I thought people would just go to a cabin in the woods and alone write a book. Oh, no. And not only, it's because it's not just about writing a book. A lot of people could write a book. It's about publishing. It's about marketing the book. It's about bringing the book to life. We're doing an event locally also, which I wanted to make sure that I mention. It's June 7th, which is a Friday. Everyone is welcome. And it's going to be built around the book. So we will be doing interviews with a couple of the characters that are real people.
Okay. I think I figured out who a couple of them are. Just you didn't use their real names, but just by the description of them, I'm like, I think I know who that is. I think I know who that is.
Yeah. You'll get to it, but there's a story about my friend Lane. There's a couple of stories about my friend Lane. He lives in Utah. He's flying in and we're going to do an interview with Lane.
Awesome.
And so some of the stories will come to life, but also you'll get to, I'm going to be interviewed by Jamie Friedland. Jamie who runs Matea's Joy.
Yep.
And
she's been on the podcast too.
She's amazing.
And I just saw both of you at Stafari last week. So
yes. Yeah. So Jamie's going to interview me. I'll be doing some deep dive teaching on concepts in the book that day also. The registration is up on amykemp.com. It's under that same book section.
Okay.
So it's all under book, or I think it's actually also under events. It's under both places, so you can find it.
And this is at the Majestic.
It's at the Majestic.
Yeah.
And I'm just really excited about it. One, because it will give me a chance to thank and celebrate people in person. But also, I think there will be an energy that comes from people having read it, because it will be a few months after the book has come out. I want to see what's happened. I want to hear some stories and have people share some stories. I want to really bring the book to life that day. So everyone is invited. You also can get a team ticket. I think it's 6 people. There's a little bit of a discount if you purchase a team ticket.
Oh, cool.
So if you want to get together a group of people and share the cost, or you have a team at work, you can bring a team of 6. So we're excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure
Stacey's helping me with all of that, of course.
Stacey Wilkin. Awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it'll be interesting to have conversations with people to learn about, what questions have come up in their minds when they've read certain chapters in your book and they ask you questions and things you didn't even think about,
Totally.
and maybe that'll spur another book.
I don't even want to talk about that. I feel like that's like saying to someone who's 9 months pregnant, so when are you going to have another baby? I think that's a horrible thing to say to me.
I'm not saying like, but I'm just saying like that might lead to the next light bulb moment that you have. You know what I mean?
I know. That's what everyone says. They say the second book comes from the response to the first.
Yes.
So I'll just trust them. I am not there yet.
No. I'm not asking like, so when are you going to do the second book? No, I'm just saying like, just for myself, just because I've noticed almost every type of creative venture I've done.
It leads to the next thing.
That's usually what leads to the next thing.
And don't you think that's the point?
Yeah, I think so. That's part of it.
Just like letting the energy of creation move through you and out into the world. Mm-hmm. It's a cool thing. And doing it with people that you love.
Yes.
And enjoying the process. I really have enjoyed every bit of this process, not just the end result. It's been I've grown and changed and learned so much through it, and then deepened relationships through this shared experience. So I'm so grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm grateful that, we were a part of it as well. So it was like, when it came time to do this podcast recording, I was like, we have to do this podcast. I mean, she recorded this book right in our studio,
here, right where I'm sitting.
And while I did hear bits and pieces of it, I love it. Kind of has all come together now where, maybe when I overheard some of those bits and pieces, it didn't really quite fit in my brain. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, but then I started reading it. I'm like, oh, wow. It's like, this was recorded here. I was like, this is awesome.
I've had so many people say, some advanced readers say, it's such a funny comment. They'll say, Amy, it's really good. Like kind of like
what did you think? It was going to be terrible? Like, it's not that I didn't think it was going to be terrible or anything like that. But
I know what they
when
mean.
You're, I wasn't necessarily, I just provided you the space and the equipment, or Pathfinder did. And it wasn't it was Steven's job to, to listen to the whole thing. I was merely just the guy to make sure that everything was working. So, that's why I was just hearing bits and pieces here and there. So I wasn't able to really kind of connect everything together.
Yeah. Well, funny story, Justin got an early copy of the book at Starbucks, and I'm literally in my pajamas driving through at a very early hour because I desperately needed a refresher. And he is yelling. He's taking the garbage out. I'm in my car in the drive-thru line. He's yelling, Amy, I mean, it's really, really good. And I'm like, thank you. I haven't brushed my teeth yet, but thank you. Like, it was the funniest thing. And he's like, no, like, I really am reading it and it's really helping me. And so
that's what I found. It's
funny conversation like that. So
only 2 chapters in, and there's so many things I'm thinking about in my brain. I'm like, ooh, like I need to approach some things differently in my life. And even with like Kankakee Podcast, it's just really got my gears to turning. So.
Well, thank you for creating this space for our community. I think these connecting points are important. I think we need to have a sense of pride about this this place that's our home and that we are creating together. And I think it's important that we have, especially our channels of communication are shifting and there's less local experience. And so these local voices, I feel like, are so important. People feel connected.
Yes, I could not agree more. Yeah. Well, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. Is there anything else that you want to get out about? I know we could go on about I See You forever, but anything else you want people to know about this book?
Sure. I think the only thing I would say in closing is it's vital for people to understand that the book was not written about something, but it was written for someone. And those are the words of my writing coach who guided me through the process. But it resonated with me so deeply because the same is true for my business. My business isn't about providing a service. It's about serving people. And if I achieved that goal of it being for someone and it serves people, then all of the creative process is worth it. It drove everything when it got really noisy and I felt doubt and fear. If I looked into the eyes of my reader, I felt very calm and I knew where to go next. And so When I say it's for people, I do mean the people here in our community. That's vital to me, that we invest here and serve the people that are in our community and connect with each other. So,
yeah, very well said. I could not agree more. So, thank you so much, Amy, for coming by. And yeah, pick up your copy of I See You. And even if you're a man,
you're welcome
whatever,
to the party.
whatever you identify as, anyone could benefit, I feel like, from I See You. So I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the book.
Cool. Oh. I can't wait for you to read it.
I'll let you know. I'll text you and I'll be like, oh my gosh, like you totally just, I just had this big epiphany in my head, and it's all thanks to your book. So
cool. Thanks, Jake.
That concludes this episode of Kankakee Podcast. I'm Jake LaMore. Thank you so much for listening. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Kankakee Podcast. Shout out to Carrie O'Connell for supporting the show each month through Patreon. If you want your name announced on a future episode, sign up at patreon.com/Kankakee Podcast. Special thanks to our sponsors, Chicago Dough Company, Noble Dairy Queen Stores, Frank's Appliance Center and Sleep Source, Pigosh Engineering, King Music, Little Me Studio, Taco John's, D. Westfall Jewelers, and Edward Jones Financial Advisor, Adam Elroy. Kankakee Podcast is produced by the fine team at Pathfinder, a full-service marketing agency in downtown Kankakee. Learn more at yourpathfinder.io. Our theme song is by Lupe Carroll.
This river carries